at the first 2,000 years, in the 6,000 years man's eclipse, I said the calculation of the first segment of 2,000 years. Now the scriptures where we take it are Genesis chapter 5, the whole of Genesis chapter 5, then Genesis chapter 11 from verses 10 to 26. These are the two places that we are going to get the first segment of the 2,000 years of the 6,000 years man's eclipse. Now you know about Adam. The Bible made us understand that God said to Adam in Genesis chapter 2 verse 17, He said, in the day you eat the forbidden fruit, you will surely die. Adam ate the fruit and he did not die physically, but he died spiritually. But one thing is that Adam will not exceed 1,000 years, which is God's one day. Because God said, within the day, within the day. And so Adam died at the age of 930 years. Genesis chapter 5 verse 5. No man has ever reached 1,000 years, because that is God's one day. Now you discover that Methuselah, who is the sixth grandson of Adam, died at the age of 969 years. Genesis chapter 5 verse 27. So that is to tell you exactly that God's one day equals man's 1,000 years, and man's 1,000 years equals God's one day. Look at how we got the first 2,000 years. The records are there in the Bible. From those scriptures I told you, you should get them. The scriptures, as I said, the scriptures are Genesis chapter 5, whole of chapter 5, then chapter 11, verse 10 to 26. You are going to get the genealogies from Adam to Abraham. You are going to take the first son of each person, just as I put them on the whiteboard here. Adam lived 130 years before he begot Seth. Who lived 105 years before he begot Enosh? Who lived 90 years before he begot Kenan? Who lived 70 years before he begot Mahalalel? Who lived 65 years before he begot Jared? Who lived 162 years before he begot Enoch? Who lived 65 years before he begot Methuselah? Who lived 107 years before he begot Lamech? Who lived 182 years before he begot Noah? Who lived 500 years before he begot Shem? Who lived 100 years before he begot Hazard? But before we go to Hazard, you discover that before Shem begot Hazard, the world, people have stayed on the earth for 1,654 years. That was when the flood came. The flood came when man's existence on earth had lasted for 1,654 years. Because Shem was 100 years when he begot Hazard, 2 years after the flood. 2 years after the flood. That is why it's supposed to have been 1,656 years. But we now separated the 2 years after the flood when Hazard was born. That is why we now have it at 1,654 years. Now, as I said, Shem was 100 years before he begot Hazard. Hazard was 35 years before he begot Salah, who was 30 years before he begot Eber, who was 34 years before he begot Peleg, who was 30 years before he begot Reu, who was 32 years before he begot Serug, who was 30 years before he begot Nahor, who was 29 years before he begot Terah, who was 70 years. Terah happened to be the father of Abraham. So Terah was 70 years when he begot Abraham. Abraham, who became Abraham at last, at the age of 54 years. And that is what gives us a first 2,000 years segment of the 6,000 years man's eclipse. That's how we got it. The records are very clear. They are there in the Bible. Now 54 in God's numerology stands for the security of believers. We are going to see that by the time we go to the second segment and see the important role that Abraham played in bringing salvation to mankind. Brethren, why we are looking at this is not to create fear in us. It's for us to exactly know the records of the number of years that God gave to man and how long have we stayed and how many years still remain, so that we shall now know the manner of persons we are going to be in terms of acquiring the wealth of this world and pursuing everything of this world, instead of us beginning to look for eternity, where to spend our eternity in heaven, how to repent and give our life to Christ and walk in the vineyard of the Lord, so that we shall earn reward. Because Jesus is coming, and his reward, he's coming with his reward. He says he's going to reward every man according to his work. Please, I want you to know why I'm trying to do all these things, so that we will know that the end of the world has come.